So how does it happen? How does a modern, educated nation just spiral into a dictatorship and then drag the entire world into the deadliest war in human history? We're going to trace that exact chain of events, from a struggling German republic right to the catastrophe of the Second World War. Historian Ian Kershaw used those exact words to describe Adolf Hitler, the embodiment of modern political evil. But here's the thing. A figure like Hitler doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It raises a really important question. How on earth does someone like that get power? And what allows an entire nation to follow them down a path to complete and utter ruin? Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story really begins in the ashes of the First World War. Germany is defeated, humiliated, and they try to build a new democracy, the Weimar Republic. But the thing is, it was a republic born into an absolute storm of crisis. At the very heart of all the anger and resentment was this one document, the Treaty of Versailles. It forced Germany to take all the blame for the war, stripped away its land and colonies, and saddled it with just crippling financial payments. To a lot of Germans, this wasn't a peace treaty. It was a national humiliation. And it basically poisoned their new democracy right from the start. And if that political instability wasn't bad enough, the world economy just collapsed. The Great Depression hit Germany incredibly hard. And by 1932, unemployment hit this staggering number, 43.6%. Just think about that. Almost half the workforce had no job. This wasn't just a statistic. It was a nationwide crisis of pure desperation. And that kind of environment, it's the perfect breeding ground for radical, dangerous ideas. So who steps into this chaos? Well, it's a fringe political group not taken seriously by many at all. The National Socialist German Workers' Party. You know them as the Nazis, led by a failed artist and World War I veteran named Adolf Hitler. They saw all this desperation, and they saw their chance. And you can see their incredible rise right here in these numbers. I mean, look at this. In 1928, the Nazis were basically a political joke, with just 2.6% of the vote. But then the financial crash of '29 hits, and their support just explodes. By July 1932, they're the single largest party in the German parliament. Their simple message of national pride and blaming others found a massive, massive audience with people who were desperate and felt like they had nothing left to lose. So how'd they pull it off? It was a masterful and sinister propaganda campaign that targeted everybody's specific fears. They went to businessmen and promised to protect them from communism. For the millions of unemployed workers, they promised two simple things: work and bread. And for pretty much all Germans, they made one huge promise: we will tear up that hated Treaty of Versailles and make Germany great again. They had a simple, powerful answer for every single problem. So now the Nazis are the biggest party in Germany. The stage is set for the final, rapid collapse of democracy. And this next part, it happens with truly breathtaking speed. Okay, look at this timeline. On January 30th, 1933, powerful conservative politicians who thought they could control him convinced the president to make Hitler the chancellor. Less than a month later, the parliament building mysteriously burns to the ground. Hitler immediately blames the communists, creates a national crisis, and the very next day, he issues the Reichstag fire decree. This decree suspends all civil liberties: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to assemble, gone. Just like that, overnight. The final nail in the coffin came just a few weeks later with something called the Enabling Act. You can see the difference right here. Before this act, you had a separation of powers. Laws went through parliament. After, all of that power was concentrated in one place, Hitler's cabinet. He could now literally make his own laws, even laws that went against the Constitution, without asking Parliament for permission at all. Let's be perfectly clear. The Enabling Act was the legal tool that officially turned a democracy into a dictatorship. By using intimidation and backroom deals, Hitler got the two-thirds vote he needed. With this one single piece of legislation, the Weimar Republic was dead. Now, the collapse of democracy inside Germany was never going to be just an internal problem. Oh no, the entire Nazi ideology was built on a foundation of aggressive, violent expansion. One of Hitler's core, unchangeable goals, he wrote about it in his book Mein Kampf, was the conquest of Lebensraum, which translates to living space for the German people. And this wasn't just about getting more land. It meant a brutal racial war of conquest and annihilation in Eastern Europe, aimed mainly at the Slavic peoples of Poland and the Soviet Union. And so the cascade began. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invades Poland. That's the final trigger. Britain and France declare war. The next year, his armies just roll across Western Europe. Then, in June 1941, he launches Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. And this opens up the largest and deadliest land war in all of human history. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around the sheer scale of that invasion. Just in the opening phase, we're talking about 10 million soldiers being thrown into this meat grinder. This wasn't just a war. Hitler himself called it a war of worldviews, and it was fought with a level of brutality that the world had never seen. So what was the final bill? The devastating human cost of this regime and the war that it started? The numbers? Well, they're almost too big to truly comprehend. Under Hitler's leadership and the Nazis' twisted, racist ideology, the regime systematically murdered an estimated 6 million European Jews. We now call this genocide the Holocaust. And on top of that unspeakable crime, an additional 28.7 million people, soldiers and civilians, died just from military action in Europe alone. The total loss of human life is just staggering. It is, by far, the deadliest conflict in all of history. When you look back, the story of the 1930s is like a perfect storm of economic desperation, political failure, and a hateful ideology that gave people easy answers. It really serves as a powerful, stark reminder for all of us, and it leaves us with one critical question we have to ask ourselves. What are the warning signs when a democracy begins to fail?